Good day, folks, and welcome to Monitoring and Evaluation Made Simple. I'm your host, Coach Alexander. I'm so happy that you're here with me at this moment, and we're going to be discussing about a very important topic, and that topic is, what is a project baseline? Yes, I'm sure you've heard this word many times. Whether it's at work, whether it's on the internet, whether it's on TV, I'm sure you've heard about this a lot of times. Well, you see, folks, before I go any further, I just want to let you know that this channel has been running for 2 to 3 years now. And no, actually it's not 2 to 3 years, it's more than that, because it started in 2016. And it's rich in content. If you're here for the first time, I would like you to subscribe to this channel by hitting the subscribe button. Okay, so let's go straight to the point. Let us talk about the real issues right now. You see, friends, I just want to let you know that whatever you do in life, whether it is building your own house, whether it is embarking on some kind of goal that you have set for yourself, it is more like a project on its own, okay? Because think of it this way, like let's say you want to get yourself a master's degree or a PhD. The activities that you do for yourselves within a span of time, it could be working hard to make money, to pay for tuition. It could be you're going for lectures. It could be you're studying. All these activities you do are contributing to an ultimate goal. And that goal, at the end of the day, is going to yield results. It's going to have a big impact on your life. So the issue here at the end of the day is that each of us, whether big or small, we embark in some kind of project. So the project I'm talking about right now are different. There could be projects you do in your personal life. It could be projects that government is financing using taxpayers' money. It could be projects that donors are contributing to. All these are projects. So now, when these projects start, they start from somewhere. They don't just start like nothing in the past happened before. No. They have to start at a point, at a start point, and then they have to have an end point. If you look at the definition of a project, that is what it means. So now, why am I saying all these things? Because before you embark on a project, there is a situation that is there when you start, okay? There's a present situation that you find your project. Okay, in short, what I'm saying is that you have a benchmark, a baseline, okay? So now, to help you understand what a project baseline is, it's simply, for instance, okay, if you go, like let's talk about a casing example of a project where you're trying to alleviate or reduce poverty in a certain community. At the time you started that project, what were the poverty levels? It could be that at the time you started the project, 80% of the population were eating only 1 meal per day. Okay, so whatever you find at the start of the project is what is called a baseline. All right, that is what you call a baseline. It's a benchmark. Then, after some months or years of implementing of that project, that is when you find maybe poverty has reduced by 30%. So like I started from the example, it was 80% poverty levels, but it reduces by 30%, meaning that the new poverty line will be 50%. So at that point, that will be known as the end line. Okay, so now, when you talk of a project baseline, it's really straightforward to explain what it is. If you go on the internet, if you read books, if you talk to project managers, if you talk to project coordinators, they will tell you the same definition. It's simply a benchmark. But you see, in reality, and this is what I have to tell you, because whatever you read in books, whatever you see on TV sometimes, isn't exactly how things are done. In reality, there are challenges when it comes to doing these baselines, okay? And the challenge really starts from the ones who are implementing these projects. Because you see, sometimes they overlook, sometimes people tend to overlook the importance that the baseline has in measuring impact. And why do I say so? Because you discover that sometimes reports are not easy to interpret because there is just no baseline figure. At the start of the project, people didn't do their homework. You cannot have, for instance, let me give you a good example. You cannot, if for instance, your project is running from 2018 to 2023, you cannot start a baseline survey in 2019. It should have actually started in 2017. Why is that the case? Because at the case in 2017, there were no project activities that time. But the minute you skip a year, it distorts your findings. Because take for instance, back to the poverty example. Imagine in 2017, poverty levels were 80%. And then the project starts in 2018 and you decide to measure poverty levels at the end of the year. And you say that, okay, the baseline is on 2018, but at the end of the year, you measure the baseline value at the end of the year when the project implementation has started. It just can't work. You need to do these things before actual implementation has started. So now, why is it that sometimes there is this lapse, this delay? Okay, there are many reasons why this could be the case. And sometimes it is the donors who delay in releasing funds. Because if you've got implementing organizations, they have to do the work and the funds come late, it can have a serious problem on implementing activities such as this. Another reason is that the management buy-in, unfortunately to say, believe it or not everyone has a buy-in into this concept of monitoring and evaluation. And they have different reasons for it. And the levels of M&E vary from one organization to another organization. It varies. Some organizations value what monitoring and evaluation is, while other organizations don't attach that much importance. So this can cause many difficulties when it comes to implementing the project baseline. So now imagine if you don't have a baseline, how do you measure impact? Because you see, at the end of your project, what will happen is that you're supposed to report at how much, what change has happened. What change has happened over the years. You're supposed to report that. But if you're not able to do that, it becomes a real challenge. If you don't have a project baseline, then it can be detrimental to your organization. A project baseline is not only important because of the fact that you can be able to determine change. Let's say in year 1, poverty was 80%. In year 5, poverty is now 30%. Then you measure that change, which is 50%. But having a baseline makes it easier for you to set targets. So now, this is where people sometimes get it wrong again. You see, when it comes to setting targets, targets need to be set based on prior information, prior knowledge. Because if you set a target that is too ambitious, you discover that you won't achieve it. Mind you, a target demonstrates an organization's commitment to see change. So for instance, let's say you have a project and you tell yourself that I'm setting a target that by year 5, poverty should reduce by 30%. That is your target. And to set that target, you have to have a baseline, you have to have a benchmark, because you will be shooting in the dark. So what is really involved in doing a project baseline? Well, a project baseline involves a lot. And actually there's I can tell you, there are 3 studies that are very important to any project, okay? The first one is the project baseline. The second one is the midterm evaluation. The third one is the end term evaluation or end line evaluation. These are the most important because when you look at the baseline, like I explained, without a baseline, you cannot be able to set targets, you cannot be able to measure any change. But then when you do the midterm evaluation, it's an in-depth study to see what change has happened as compared to the baseline value, but midway through project implementation. So let's say it's a 5-year project. Okay, anyway, let me say this also. A project is usually not that long. Projects usually run for a year or 2. Programs are usually the longer one. But I'll be using a project and program interchangeably, but of course we're talking about a project. So now, I'm talking about the midterm evaluation. That evaluation is important because it is significant in the sense that it is the game changer. If, for instance, it is discovered that you are not making any impact, then drastic changes will be made. It could be that the mode of implementation will have to change. The resources attached to a certain activity will have to change. So it is a game changer. And then the third study, the most important study of them all, is the evaluation. So now, when undertaking a baseline survey, there is need to understand the project. So a baseline, there are 2 ways to do. There are two ways people, or 2 reasons why someone or an organization may undertake a baseline. One reason could be they may decide to undertake a baseline survey in order to inform the design of a project. Yes. So like I was saying, there may be two reasons, okay? The first reason why a project baseline may be undertaken, it may be done to inform the design of a project. So this may be the first activity that people will undertake so that they have an idea that, okay, this is the situation in a certain community. So what kind of project should we bring to this community, or what project or program should we bring to this area? So they do a baseline. But another way it is done is when the actual documents, the project has been designed, there's a project document, there are funds already attached, there are indicators, there's a log frame. So in that particular case, already people have an idea of the direction they want to take. So they will do the baseline, collect information against all the indicators in the log frame, and just simply report that at baseline level, these are the values. Number of people living with poverty are these. This is the number. That's the baseline value. Income levels is at this stage. So it will be simply like that. So now, in order to actually undertake such an activity, there are so many factors. For instance, the biggest one is the scope. The scope of work is dependent on the project, the project design. You know, because for instance, if I'm using the poverty example here. Okay, so for instance, if you want to impact on the lives of so many people in a certain area, it's dependent on the population size, it's dependent on the legislation, so many things. Okay, so whatever is invested in this activity is dependent on the design and also on the amount of funds that the donors have put into this activity. So what does it take to do a project baseline? The first thing is that you need to identify the right capacity to undertake it. In most cases, a lot of organizations rely on consultants, monitoring and evaluation consultants, because these guys are rich in experience, they probably have the right qualifications, and most importantly, they are objective, okay? They are objective, and this is something that is, like I mentioned in the previous video, this is something that can be a major hindrance to implementers, because there is that fight, there is that tug of war between what they should be reporting to donors and also between how they can protect their jobs, their relevance. So sometimes they would want to report good, beautiful things, okay? Of course, not at baseline level, but maybe at mid-term level or end-term. So it becomes, in most cases, to do the baseline, they'll identify capacity and they'll use consultants who are rich in experience and the technical know-how to collect this information. So what these consultants will do is, when you, as an organization, if you decide to contract a consultant, the first thing you need to do is sit down as a team and, of course, the HR staff post an ad, let people apply, and then you screen their CVs, you identify. But what is key is that, you see, consultants, when they come in, believe it or not, they have their own idea of how a project baseline should be done. But as an organization, you need to dictate to them what the baseline should have, and that should be reflected in the terms of reference. So when you develop the terms of reference, make sure you explain in detail what you want to see out of this project baseline. It is very important because if any indicator is missed at the baseline level, if they miss out on collecting certain information at the year one, you miss that opportunity. You will not be able to track it very well if it's missed, if it's absent in the baseline report. And this has happened before. You'll find that at year one, maybe a consultant forgot to collect information about poverty levels in a certain area. And that is something you need to track and compare over the years. He missed it in year one, you cannot collect it in year two and make year two a baseline. You see what I'm saying? So it's important that in the terms of reference, you clearly outline everything from the very start. So when the consultant is contracted, you have the meeting, you share the terms of reference, he signs, provide all the things he needs, past documentation, the project document, and then he collects, okay? And then he collects, he has the information provided to you, and you approve the baseline report. Make sure that the report meets your demands. Other organizations have decided, have opted to use their internal capacity to conduct a baseline. So I want to mention that doing that at the baseline level isn't a big deal. It's just okay. Because if an organization decides, like they are the implementers, they decide to do the baseline themselves, it's fine. Because at baseline level, at year one level, they are not trying to impress anybody. They're just stating what is there. But what becomes a no is for them to actually do the end-term evaluation. That one needs a consultant. But they can still be involved in routine monitoring activities. It is fine. Because in most cases, when they do routine monitoring activities, it's not only benefiting the stakeholders, but it is benefiting themselves because they are in a way building on their internal capacity. So that is what is key. So now, looking at the project baseline, I want you to visualize yourself actually doing this activity. You need to ask yourself these questions. Why is this activity important? Because once you continuously convince yourself on the importance of this activity, it will become very critical that whatever you do at every stage of the process, you keep a close eye. Yes. Okay, so now that was all I wanted to talk about on this issue of the project baseline, what it is. I sure hope you enjoyed this discussion, because on monitoring and evaluation made simple, there are 3 categories there that I release on the videos, and one of the categories are the voice notes. And if you look at my channel, it has this section on voice notes. They are longer, but they are rich in content. So I would like you to tell me, if you want, you can be posting some comments about how you feel about this presentation. And also, please feel free to subscribe once again to this channel. Until we meet again, see you on the other side. Bye.